Good Saturday afternoon, everybody. Meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center right now, coming on the air for a severe thunderstorm warning for areas of Clay County. Much of Clay County under this until 4:45 this afternoon. We are watching here the potential for some damaging wind gusts in toward this region. We have parts of, that area that are included, and some of the locations include Green Cove Springs, Middleburg, Penny Farms, and Asbury Lake. So 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts possible. The severe thunderstorm at 4:01 was located near Dodgers Inlet or near Middleburg, moving south at only 5 miles an hour. So that's a lot of rainfall coming on down as we're looking toward parts of Clay County this afternoon. Again, a severe thunderstorm warning till 4:45. I know if you're watching from Bradford County, I know I'm in Bradford County. We have some strong storm accident. Boy, I was just starting to post that, getting ready, to post that. I hadn't hit the send button yet. They're in that situation as we had this warning pop-up, so I need to go ahead and jump on because of the same complex, and the accident toward the east is quite a bit worse even than what we're getting in toward the Stark area. So that's kind of the storyline there as we're looking at things. This is pretty substantial there in Clay County right now as we're watching this scenario. I know if you have some lightning in Bradford County, whenever thunder roars, you do got to go indoors. You have to be careful here because, that lightning can be deadly. Obviously it can strike folks. It can also strike homes and the like. So this is pretty strong thunderstorm around Stark. We haven't had, a whole bunch of that here this summer. But this is more substantial, and the reason we're on the air is because of Clay County here. Middleburg, Russell, Green Cove Springs, I know right along State Road 16. Very heavy downpour there. We're talking about right in Penny Farms there. They're getting hammered right now around Penny Farms. Not overwhelming, don't get me wrong. This isn't, a tropical system or anything like that. But this is just, our squall line even. But this is some pretty nasty weather in toward Penny Farms in central Clay County this afternoon. So I know there's some different road changes here in that region. So folks just have to be kind of mindful, unfamiliar roads maybe, in terms of that new one opening on up there that's, going to be one where you have to get toll here pretty soon, that, new section there as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things. So something to kind of bear in mind here. Just got to be kind of careful with the new, routes that folks are taking and the like there. It can make things kind of tricky. I was hoping there would be some cameras on that stretch of the First Coast Expressway. There are not yet, but further up there, we do have some cameras. Let me see what I can kind of get from that. Let me go ahead and kind of try to pull one on up here on the traffic system on the Florida 5-1 system. It's a little north of where maybe some of the worst of this is. But we'll go ahead and pull it on up here as we look live right now. You see this nasty weather here. They're talking about that new stretch of the expressway, First Coast Expressway open, State Road 21 to US 17. And my understanding is not necessarily this part of it. We're looking at the camera, but further down, the part that just opened is going to be free to test drive there per se before the tolls start getting assessed as we look ahead. But the point is that part of it where they're at, not this part, but the part that's just opened is getting some pretty nasty weather, and folks may not be familiar with that roadway, and that could lead to some accidents. So hopefully there's not a whole bunch of traffic out, but it's Saturday afternoon, and that is a busy area. Hopefully maybe it's kind of splitting the traffic up and allowing things to be a little bit better. But this is a look here just a little bit further up to the north there in Clay County. You can kind of see there the dark skies tell that weather story. So let's go ahead and zoom back here to the radar view, and you can kind of see what we're dealing with here as the situation does move along here. With that camera just from, the Middleburg, Oakley, Plantation area. And then as you look here on Penny Farms, again, some pretty nasty weather right along State Road 16 there in Clay County. Again, some, reduced visibility for sure. Some winds could gust to 60. Not out of the question here in toward Clay County. As we're looking at things, as we're tracking things here in toward the Weather Center. Let me go ahead and keep looking at some information here to try to effort you the latest on what's going on. This, red here that you're looking at, you're not maybe accustomed to seeing that. That is just the stronger winds that we're dealing with here based on the Doppler assessment. Obviously, the different indicators there, lightning strike indicators, tell that story about the electrical energy around. So gotta be careful with that in play here for sure. As we're dealing with things, as we're tracking things here, I'm just trying to go through some of the different tools here in the toolkit. Let me go ahead and look at some more information on our rainfall on here. Some of these red areas starting to really add up. I mean, an inch, 2 inches there, based on the Doppler estimates. That tells the story. It definitely tells a story there in toward parts of Clay County there, right just, in Middleburg. This is there as we're looking at things, right in that area, getting hammered here next Saturday afternoon. From the worst of that now, though, in terms of precip, getting a little bit further down toward the south here, as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things. Again, I'm just trying to give you guys the very latest on what's going on. Again, effort and all the latest on in here. It's very important just to be doing that here in toward the meteorology scenario, the meteorological situation. So let me go ahead and keep looking at some things. I'm going to go ahead and pull up a camera. I know we still have rain coming down here east of Stark. It's not severe here, but we'll look back to the west on our camera view, and you'll be able to see some of that precip coming on down. Tree's not moving too much, but just kind of tells that weather story. Not a warning here in Bradford County, but an advisory in play. We have some, there could have been some gust in there, on the order of 45 miles an hour, give or take. Last we got about 17 miles an hour here at about 6-7 feet up. So I'm looking at things. It's not overwhelming. 4/10 of an inch of rain on that rain gauge here, but some areas well over an inch there in the lower parts of Clay County. So let me go ahead and jump back on over to the Doppler here as we're tracking things. This afternoon, we're trying to give you guys the very latest to protect you, your friends, your family. And we have this warning until 4:45, at least as of now, for portions of Clay County. So some pretty nasty weather in that vicinity. So again, just trying to keep you up to date on what's going on right along there, State Road 16 and Penny Farms. They're getting some pretty nasty weather. That's what they're having to deal with here. That's what they're having to deal with right now in the lower parts of Clay County there, right in central Clay County, really. That's where they're dealing with some of the worst of this. We had a couple other warnings earlier on. I was watching those very carefully as we were looking up toward the Jacksonville Airport there and up toward Brunswick. We had a flash flood warning around Brunswick too. I wasn't all that impressed by what I saw in the Doppler up there around Brunswick, and haven't seen any reports of wind damage there. And then around Jacksonville, I haven't seen any of that come up in the system and toward the airport region either. That one gets pretty quick there. But we posted them, of course, on the different platforms. And this one here, it was showing some interesting characteristics. Nothing really overwhelming, but it is really close to home. We're in Bradford, and wanted to, we don't, maybe get, I don't know the exact number, but we haven't got that many warnings for Clay here, Penny Farms area, and wanted to just make sure we were in, here for this on the air with you guys. As we're looking, I know Facebook and Twitter/X are always posting the warning that we don't need to jump in for live coverage, but this time of year we have to use our discretion. We can't be on for every single severe thunderstorm warning. They just pop up. I mean, we're ready to go on. It's just the idea, like, we've done it, a little bit sometimes over the years, a little bit more frequently for some of these, but sometimes it's just, I mean, by the time the warning comes out, even you're already getting the damage, and it's really isolated compared to a squall line in the winter and springtime. Well, obviously, under the tornado warning, we're always on. We've been on for every single one of those tornado warning storms moving across the area since like 2019. It's all about protecting you, your friends, and your family. So, again, just trying to stay on top of everything here. Let me go ahead and zoom back out a little bit as we're watching things. You see up toward parts of South Georgia. Ooh, a little bit of rotation there, I would call that. Let me go ahead. It might just be the way the angle is on the radar here. Let me check the Moody's site. So I'm gonna verify that. That'd be the closer view on here. Well, that's interesting when boundaries come together. Because I was not expecting to see that from that radar too. That may get us a severe thunderstorm or even a tornado warning here if that holds together. I don't know if it will. I'm gonna go ahead and load the frames in off of this radar. This is very rural, by the way. So it's not something you'd really be watching that close, but we just had some interactions here, and all of a sudden we have a spin here. I know it didn't match up 100% perfectly, but it's pretty close. I mean, it's pretty close in there. See, from both radars there, it's kind of concerning. I'm surprised by that. I mean, just you can get occasionally. We don't generally, get it too often. We haven't really had hardly any this, summer here with any type of spin-up tornado warnings locally. But there's something that's trying to get going there. This is in South Georgia, if you're wondering. It's very rural. And this kind of catches my eye. I mean, I can hardly see any towns in there. But let me give you, this is parts of Ware County. We have some rotation on that. I mean, it's kind of, right. It's not lined up perfectly, but for this time of year, that's something we're, watching there. It looked like there were, maybe a home or two in there, maybe not, but like maybe something right up there. So at least it's in almost the middle of nowhere, but you never know if somebody's out and about. And just like that, that circulation kind of spun down. It looked like it was coming together there. Let me lose some other frames. I want to see how this kind of interacted. Maybe I'm gonna back this up. I think we had an interaction. That's what did it. Sometimes I can get you a very quick spin up tornado. This is in Ware County, Georgia. But it's gone now. Don't really see the re-signatures. That's good. Maybe it didn't quite come together, but that was kind of interesting. Because I was thinking maybe that was just the angle on the radar, but it showed it, on that view, and it also showed it on the Jacksonville view here that we were looking off of. But you wouldn't really expect it to, if it was something that was just the issue with the angle. I mean, that's the thing about having two radar, two angles. You're not just going to have, like, contamination here. That was some type of spin trying to come together. Very rural area, thankfully, but they've had a little something in the north part of Ware County there, just on the edge of Clemson and Ware, and that advisory that the Weather Service has out for up to 50-mile-an-hour gusts. But, that's a little stronger out there if anybody's, like, I don't know exactly if this is, like, areas where people hunt or not, but, somebody could have got caught in it, or, some different paths out there as we're looking at things. So, as we're looking at towards South Georgia. But again, let's get back to our warning down here. Now, the rain's coming back down here where we're at in Bradford County. We got an update on the severe thunderstorm warning here. Let's see what they're saying. I know we had, that Brunswick one way earlier. We did have a tornado possible tag. Again, I did not, that was 12 o'clock, and we posted about that. I just did not see a whole bunch with that. That's why we didn't jump in. So, but as we're looking at our current storm now, at 419, and severe thunderstorm is looking at 7 miles west of Green Cove Springs. At least the worst of it, moving south at 10 miles an hour. Green Cove Springs, Penny Farms, and then Asbury Lake. So let's go ahead and go to the coverage map. We're in Bradford County. We're always on, like I said, for any tornado warning storms. We haven't had any of that, in a while here, but we're always on for any tornado warning storms for the 62 counties. But as we get back to the Doppler, we're up to pretty much a half inch, 0.49 on the rain gauge here. East is dark for this last little bit. A precip. I know in North Clay County, that wind doesn't look quite as impressive. I mean, it hasn't looked completely, just overwhelming at any point with the wind. I mean, you saw some different things try to come together in there a bit. But it's still some pretty nasty weather there in North Clay County. So, again, that's why I'm with you guys this afternoon. Let me see if there's any questions or comments from any of the viewers at home. As we're looking, it's a Saturday afternoon, you're trying to enjoy things, and unfortunately some of this destructive weather coming on in here. We talked about a higher rain chance today, and we're seeing that in a lot of backyard. We talked about that on that late Tuesday update. You see some strong thunderstorm action here south of Mayo. Lafayette County, you see some light in Flagler County here. As we're looking, of course, we talked about this in South Georgia with that rotation we've been watching. We watched it from the other closer radar even more so as the situation has evolved. So, I know. We're looking back here in Bradford County. Rain's coming down pretty hard. It's coming down, you know, it's pretty heavy right now. Let's go back to the camera view. You can see that here live outside our window, literally. As we're looking here, you know, east to start back to the west. You see that heavy rain coming on down right now. That's a strong but not severe storm around Stewart. That's part of the complex per se, the accent. You know, that's what we're seeing right now. You're hearing the microphone a little bit, even here in Bradford County. So again, that's kind of a storyline there as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things. Not too much wind, but just a lot of that heavy downpour activity from efficient rainfall production. You know, I'm not saying it's going to happen like this today, as I'm going to look at something here real quick. But, well, I see it's kind of slowing up a little bit. That's concerning. I know. You know, we had back a few years ago, late August, we had that flooding at middle school there. A lot of rain coming down in a short period of time. You know, that's really, really hard to predict. You know, it's in general terms because of this percentage is unlikely to happen again. You know, that's something that very rarely happens. It was like, I can't remember if it was once in 100 or whatever rainfall rate, once in a 500-year rainfall rate situation, but you know, I do see this kind of stalling out a little bit around start. That's kind of concerning here. So let's loop this around. You see how we have some boundaries, and now this is kind of just hanging around. I don't know that we're going to get that 5 inches in an hour or two, but you may get a couple of inches here out of this. You need to be kind of mindful here. It's going to start to become a situation where things might have trouble draining a little bit. I don't know if it's going to, you know, it's just again really hard to predict, but we're starting to see that kind of hanging around. We had that flooding in Ocala last night. There was some pretty significant flooding. We alluded to it. We were, you know, pretty serious to tone. I saw some video. There was some, you know, deep water there in the water. Some spots on some of those roads just off the interstate, it looked like. So that's always a cause for concern. You just got to be very careful. That was at night. This is in the afternoon, but make it a flood advisory for Stark here. You know, if this starts to hang out, it's not enough for a flood warning or flash flood warning right now, but I make it a flood advisory if we start to see that hang around a little bit more. Let me see what we have on another list here of alerts. Just bear with me. Just bear with me. Just trying to keep you guys up to date. And we have a heat advisory, but now we're pulling off with that. We have a flood advisory for Duval and Nassau. We have, you know, some action with the flash flood warning up there with the Savannah, but as we're looking at things and the like, but kind of starting to stall out a little bit. We need to watch this. We're up to 7/10 of an inch now here in the rain gauge around Stark. You know, this is a pretty efficient rainfall producer in and of itself. Let's just kind of watch this loop again. You need to start being careful, like in this flood-prone spots here around Stark, because it just keeps stalling out like this, and we could start to have problems there. Not saying it's going to happen. This is not something you can really predict, quite honestly. It's just right now we're seeing heavy rain and kind of really moving. You know, so you just got to think about some of those flood-prone spots around US 301, for instance, or, you know, the water might not go down very quickly. So if this keeps happening, you know, keeps continuing here, we could start to have problems here around Stark. This is some pretty heavy rain. I mean, you know, it's hard to judge just from listening to it and looking at our camera. I mean, I would say we've had heavier. We're a little east, you know, the darker red on this map, but, you know, as we're looking, we're more kind of in, you know, the edge of the red and the, you know, darker, you know, orange there. But as we go ahead and let me pull back the camera again. It's pretty heavy rain as we're looking, as we're tracking things. And speaking of, you know, big rainfall events in the past, we had, I mean, Debbie was pretty big last year. Debbie 2012 was even worse than that, though. Irma in 2017, of course, the flood there where we had the middle school flood. It was a situation kind of like this. We had the 5 inches in an hour, so hopefully it didn't happen today. But we're going to have to monitor things. It's not something you're going to predict, because if you don't have much steering, this could. I mean, we, you know, have had the instability up there. So here's thunder. It's kind of dangerous there, you know, just kind of out of the, not blue, but, you know, haven't had much lightning right around Stark, and you probably just heard that thunder in the background pretty close nearby to that lightning. So We're at 78 degrees, but we've had that heat advisory. So that, extra energy factor here to kind of let this kind of hold on a little bit. Maybe it's something to see here lately. Let me go to the energy map, the surface-based Cape. You see how some areas in that dark purple for 5,000 joules per kilogram around Bradford County, 3,000, 4,000 joules per kilogram here of surface-based capes. So that's something to kind of keep in mind here as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things here. So definitely some energy for this storm action to work with. Let me go ahead and see what else we might have here. Let's see the temperatures, of course, on this map. You see 90 still at the word Tallahassee. Which you see the yellow box. The reason we jumped in was for Clay County. The severe thunderstorm warning over there. See all that rain over in the area. You could have some flooding there for sure. These areas might drain, with less concrete, maybe better than other parts of Clay County, but Asbury Lake to Penny Farms, a couple inches of rain in the last hour. So that's pretty noteworthy there. You see in Georgia, look at this. This is very rural, but some areas over 3 inches in an hour. We had that rotation popping up that I was telling you guys about. A very rural Clinton, Ware County area, but nonetheless, still worth noting, obviously, as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things. As we monitor the meteorological storyline. I'm getting into Charleston County some too, as we give you guys the very latest here on all of this. So again, we're live with you 4:31 on this Saturday afternoon, as we're giving you guys the very latest here. Giving you guys the very latest. I know. We're going to go ahead and keep giving you guys the updates here. We, zoom out quite a bit. You see in like parts of Missouri there, some storm action popping up around St. Louis, some severe weather potential in Illinois and Wisconsin. There's a thunderstorm watch up there. So that's kind of interesting just to watch here from the meteorological viewpoint here, the broad view as we're looking here and tracking things. So again, we're here with you guys this afternoon. We'll go ahead. I'm just going through some things behind the scenes here. It's all about informing you guys and protecting you, your friends, and your family. Just trying to stay on top of everything. That flooding there, I believe that was just doing it off the top here. A middle school flooding there in Bradford. It was just doing some research, kind of too, in a weird way, but it was on August 28th, 2022 there, a Sunday, that Bradford middle school flooding there. So that was significant. I know it's weird because I was just getting ready to watch, before we had that pop up and I had to jump in. NFL preseason game, it just kind of occurred to me a little bit. I know late Greg Gumbel was calling that, and he's, he passed away last December. That's quickly, time flies, less than 3 years, of course. Just so many people, passing away here the last few years, including my father last year as well, but, back last April. But as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things here, just kind of giving you guys the very latest here on all of this. Just trying to give you guys the latest updates on the situation here meteorologically. We're just trying to keep you up to date. We're not over an inch of rain here around Stark. Most rain we've gotten one little cluster here in a while. As we're looking at things, as we're tracking things, it's starting to really add up now. Over an inch, and it's not really relenting, so cause for concern. Remember to monitor wherever you are, whether it's in Bradford County or not. Turn around, don't drown. As this rain is not really stopping here around Stark. So let's go ahead and keep looking at things, keep tracking things here. Again, I know we had the severe warning in the east, but I'm just starting to kind of watch here, what we're dealing with around Bradford County with some of this flood potential starting to be a storyline. So, I'm just going through some things here. Incident reports in Bradford County. There's a report of a brush fire on Hampton County Road 325 and 81st Street. I gotta wonder if that was because of lightning. It just got reported on in there. I'm not really kidding. No, some of there is much rain. That's the issue sometimes. If you don't get as much rain, and you get the lightning, and that can kind of be a spark that's not easily put out here, at least initially, because you don't have the rain to kind of just stop it. A little bit of a weak rotation in Putnam County now. We'll watch that here as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things there. This is north there of State Road 100. And you just continue to watch all this electrical energy here. Just continuing to give you guys the very latest on exactly what's happening here in the overall picture. Just trying to keep you guys up to date here, obviously. It's a busy afternoon in toward the Weather Center. A lot of precip coming on down here in Bradford County. And then in Clay County, we had the actual severe warning. Got some rotation in Putnam County. We had some rotation, more so even. It was very clear up into Georgia. That's how the tropics. We'll shift away from the severe weather. We want to talk about the tropics because, there's a big storyline out there, but it's not something that's going to impact us in the land areas directly or indirectly, really, in the land areas with bad impact. Actually, it's going to dry us out next week, with the overall flow, but as we're kind of looking at things and as we're tracking things here, but as we're kind of looking here at the overall scenario, I know we're going to go ahead and be watching out for rip currents and rough surf though at the Atlantic beaches for sure. But let's jump over to the Virgin Islands. There's a radar I can pull up over here. You can actually see Hurricane Erin here. That eye of that is just well north of there, but it's on the fringes here. Kind of a wide view with the radar and able to see this. I mean, this makes it doesn't look as impressive as it does on satellite, but being able to see this from radar is important to kind of tell you guys about because it's an interesting meteorological, storyline case study, and this will help, figure some things out based on being able to see this, on a distant radar side even, but get a little bit of idea about the eye wall, but I know it is the big story, and I'm kind of burying the lead here because, it's not going to have direct impacts like we've talked about, in terms of anything negative, just direct surf and, the enhanced rip current toward the beaches. But this is a Category 5 hurricane here, folks. Cat 5. We don't get that very often here. This is, something, I know we've been very busy here recently, but, something that Cat 5 generally haven't been all that common over the decades here. I mean, we've been pretty busy here in recent years in the tropics with stories, I believe it was Barrow and Milton last year were both Cat 5, as I recall at points. So, you see it though on the infrared satellite. That really does tell that weather story. It's a very well-defined hurricane. Again, some of the bands we saw last flood warning down toward the Virgin Islands. That's that dark green polygon there. That's a very well-defined hurricane here, folks. As we're looking at things, as we're tracking things, it really is a powerful cyclone for sure. But again, the direct impacts are not going to happen here toward the U.S. As we look here, I will say that if I'm in the Outer Banks of North Carolina, because of the way the wind field might expand, I'd be watching this a little more carefully than everybody else, because there's a chance you guys could get some, tropical storm conditions in the Outer Banks as this tries to make that turn, especially a little bit further west, and it's going to be a bigger size by then. So the Outer Banks of North Carolina might end up getting under tropical storm watch or something. Even Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, they're obviously having to deal with some of this here down toward that region with the overall storyline, getting the thunderstorms already, but they're not under, as of last check, any tropical storm watches there, but, they're just trying to give you guys the very latest on what's going on. Let me go ahead and pull up the Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale. Again, you don't generally have a catastrophic Cat 5 out there like what we have right now. You know, a very big storyline, obviously, as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things here. Again, we've told you guys this for days, though, that there's not going to be any, you know, adverse impacts for our land areas here locally. That's good news. Now, you know, toward the water there, the marine zones there, we're going to have some rip current risk that could be, you know, rather dangerous. It could be deadly. You got to be really careful. I mean, it can be 500 miles off the coast here of our area in general, based on the latest data. But you know, there can be some really, really rough surf. We generally don't have a storm, you know, that powerful in that position of the Atlantic, so that's going to really stir things up here with that surf. It's going to be, I mean, surfers may like it, but it still can be very dangerous, you know, for, I mean, if they know what they're doing, maybe not as much for them, but for everybody else, it can be very dangerous as we're looking and as we're tracking things. So Cat 5 Hurricane Aaron, the E-name on the list here again, you know, very, very, you know, nasty storm system. But again, we're not turning logo red or anything like that. You know, we're very confident it's going to stay way to the east of our area. Actually going to bring in dry air next week. But, you know, the marine interest could have some issues. Now, we could get, you know, for eastern North Carolina, the Outer Banks, that'd be the one area where we could actually have some, you know, legitimate fringe land impacts with some, you know, tropical storm gusts, maybe a tropical storm watch having to be issued out there toward like the Outer Banks in North Carolina, Cape Hatteras, somewhere around there, may get a tropical storm watch up in that area, not out of the question there, and then the surf be even worse up there potentially, but as it'd be closer toward the center, but not really close based on all the latest guidance. Some gusty winds in there for sure, you know. We'll have to watch for that. Okay, so there's our storm system. I know sometimes, and I will say our system, it is a Cat 5, Category 5. Sometimes our tracker, though, it likes to keep it with the different numbers a little bit longer than it should, because it's not going to see a Cat 5 here maybe quite as long as it's showing on this, because it rounds things kind of weird sometimes as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things. But we're just gonna kind of continue to keep you guys up to date here on the situation. But let me go ahead and continue. Again, this is a Category 5 hurricane there, but we're not on because of that. You know, it's just that's a meteorological, for most, a novelty situation, not, you know, really big deal because nobody's getting this directly. It's staying north, you know, of these areas down here as we're looking at the overall situation, as we're watching things and tracking things north of the northern Leeward Islands. So some outer bands have been affecting the northern Leeward Islands, so even if they're not getting those direct impacts there, which obviously is great news because that's a really dangerous storm system. So as we go ahead and zoom back over here, see how our quarter cloud tops all that moisture in the upper levels. Our severe thunderstorm warning box, this went away for Clay County, so that's some good news as we're tracking that situation here on the local level. Let's go ahead and kind of jump back on over here. You can see we do have some wind enhancement in northern Putnam County now, but as we're tracking things, as we're monitoring things, so that's something to kind of be mindful of. But I know we're just going to keep on giving you guys the latest here, obviously, as the situation does progress. It's just always important to keep an eye on things here, you know, as things do evolve here and develop. So I'm just going through all the different sources here at my disposal. Still some pretty heavy rain around Bradford County. We're up to 1.56 inches now in the rain gauge here east of Stark. So pretty, you know, high totals. It does seem like it's starting to slack off though, which is some good news here around Stark, especially in town. So that's good. Still probably had some minor flooding in a few spots, so I would think with that. But it's good it's starting to slack off, you know. It's unpredictable sometimes. These times a year, these types of situations that scrub back, go forward here. We have some other areas of lightning here that we're looking at here and the like, but again, just trying to keep you guys up to date on everything that's going on. It's just always very important to be watchful of the different meteorological situations. Just looking through some things here. Just trying to watch some things. Looking here at 1 hour total for rainfall, a couple inches, even in Clay County, you know, some of these purple's over 2 inches. In the last hour, you see some other acts in here. You know, looking at Wynn, Suwannee, Lafayette counties, we're watching some of that activity. South Florida, some of that looks like it's weakening there around Ware and Clint's, but especially Ware, you know, even over Charlton, as we're tracking all of that there. I know, just kind of trying to give you guys the heads up on all of this here. I know we're going to be tracking things here. Of course, we're watching things in the Atlantic with the air, and even though that's not that big of a deal for us here locally, we did get a new 5 o'clock advisory though. So let me go ahead and give you some of the numbers on that. So just came in 160 mile an hour maximum sustained winds, minimum central pressure at 915 millibars, category 5 hurricane out there, and then it looks like a tropical storm watch now for the Turks and Caicos Islands. So it's an important storyline there as we're looking out further in toward the Atlantic Basin. No watch for like Puerto Rico though, or the Virgin Islands. It doesn't look like as of now. The situation, you know, still develops here. Keeping a very close eye on things. Keeping a very close eye, obviously, on the scenario. I'm just going to keep on checking all the latest data. As we go ahead and zoom back out. Let me go ahead and zoom in here locally. You see all this electrical energy whenever thunder roars, you want to go indoors, obviously. It's so important to be mindful of what's going on in these different scenarios. And we're just continuing to watch this. We're at 1.6 inches on the rain gauge now here east of Stark. You know, it's falling here in a pretty short period of time. See some wind there, but rain is slacking off. That's good news. There's still a lot of rain though, pretty short period of time. As we're looking at things, tracking things. That's the most rain we've got here in a little bit, you know, not quickly, but as we're kind of watching things here. Looking up north of Savannah, they're having a report of 2 vehicles stalled there. I hear our rain picking back up at least momentarily here. Hearing that on the roof. But as we go ahead and keep on tracking things here, just looking at all the different data points. Let me go ahead, see some forecast model information. Bear with me with this. I'm going to try to put a viewpoint of the progression up here of what potentially to expect. It's not going to be exactly right, but you can see some of the storm activity here as we progress into toward the timeline. Just trying to give you guys the latest updates, obviously. See, even at 7 o'clock tonight, we still have some storminess around, so just have to be kind of mindful here of all that. You know, not wanting to break down here in some of these areas, still having some of this concern, obviously. It's just, always important to be very careful here. Still some of that electrical energy. Some areas could have some flooding, as we've alluded to, because of these, slow-moving storms. I mean, that's something you gotta be really watching out for here. Don't want to get caught off guard here in one of these situations. Let me go ahead and progress this out though. 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10, 11, midnight, 1. You see a lot of it breaking up, and it's the overnight hours. See some stuff around southeast Georgia that may be in and out in the early morning. And as we get there, indoor the afternoon, I know we'll watch some of that, but in the afternoon you see more development of quite a bit more storm action. And slacking off in the evening there as we're tracking things. And then that's getting you into early Monday on this forecast model. Look at things at that point in time. Let me go ahead and show you here another view of some things as the situation evolves. I want to kind of broaden the picture out a little bit. Kind of want to broaden the view here, because we are looking here at some things. I know. Let me go ahead and kind of show you with a hurricane out there, a Category 5 hurricane. This, some of the model guidance is showing. I'll take off the other dots. We'll just put the official track on, take off the wind forecast. I just want to kind of progress this out. You'll be able to see that turn here, on this view as well, with the hurricane. And this is, getting into tomorrow here, and see it kind of generally following the path. And this is in toward Monday the 18th, Tuesday the 19th. This gets you into toward the 20th here on Wednesday. And, we'll watch up toward like the Outer Banks to see if this goes a little further west of Euro. I don't have it in this system, but Euro says they're going a little bit west. But you see here, we'll be watching, have Bermuda out here. It should go west of that, east of the Outer Banks. I think if anything, it was tugging a little bit earlier. It may go a little bit closer to the Outer Banks, but still it wouldn't be, a direct hit on them. But it could get a tropical storm watch, maybe tropical storm warning for a few zones up there. But you see it kind of going off. But then we have to watch another system that tries to organize. And now this is something not all the models are picking up on now. So don't, this is not a guarantee it's going to have them. But this is next Thursday. You see, if you look down here, we have another area that tries to organize, and the pattern may be different by the time we, get past Aaron here. Could end up, may not be this name, may not even get named, but if it did evolve, could be Fairnon there in toward the tropical picture. As we're watching the situation, could end up seeing Fairnon as we're kind of looking at things and tracking things here. I know we'll have to just kind of wait and see. There's a lot of, time to watch. But you kind of see another system going south of where this last one went. And then that could try to evolve into something as we're getting out. This is like next Saturday here. It could be something in the vicinity of Puerto Rico or to the south. We'll see. That could be a hurricane there. You see the I formation and the like. And then, you just never know, because, if this were to go a little north and it gets into Hispaniola, whatever it is, whether it's organized or not, it could just break up. There's a lot of time to watch. Don't stress out. But something to watch here. Maybe another system. Aaron's not going to have a direct local impact, but his next system could. You see it does kind of weaken as it gets over Hispaniola. They have tall mountains, high mountains, but then it tries to reorganize there. I will say that it may have more trouble reorganizing where it is on this model than, some of the other models, or just other thought processes for this. If it went a different way, it would, have maybe a little bit easier environment. It's kind of interesting how it strengthens it as much as it does where it was. I mean, so favorable things were for Aaron, but still, that's just about as far as it goes out. But you see maybe something there toward the Keys as we get, toward the 26th, but we'll see. You just never know. This is just one model. A lot of the other models aren't showing this, but I know that is Tuesday the 26th, how we're looking at things on that calendar. So that's as far as I'll go out with that. But, you know, just a thought we got to watch. It's not all about one storm system. Aaron's not going to be a problem for us other than the, you know, the rip current and the rough surf. We'll dry out some next week, but, you know, another storm system could be a problem, but it's way too early to know for sure as we're looking and as we're tracking things. That's kind of a storyline there for sure. I know 1 hour rainfall, some of these areas in Georgia, 3 inches there, parts of our county, a couple inches here around Bradford County, around Stark. You know, as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things, should check some of the information here behind the scenes. You know, as the situation does evolve, and we're down to 77 degrees there on the Bradford County Sheriff's Office weather stem station. Now, according to their sensor, and this just says how hyperlocal things get, you know, their rainfall only still about a ½ inch on the gauge, but not that far away, and we picked up 1.68 inches, so, you know, they're just east of Stark, so definitely a hyperlocal thing sometimes, especially this time of year, as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things, so, again, it's something to be very mindful of. Gonna see, I'm gonna look at some other data here in the Weather Center. Some areas picking up a lot of rain. Other areas are, you know, are seeing totals over an inch here in Bradford County. We're in Hampton. I mean, kind of maybe a fire there. I don't know if it's because of the lightning or not, but you know, some, you know, low rainfall totals down there, which, you know, not exactly helpful. We're talking about, you know, the rust fire maybe because of the lightning. I don't know. Let me go ahead and see if there's any information. I don't see anything here. No, they have had some of the lightning fire stuff, you know, in the past here too, but I know, definitely just got to be mindful of these situations. That is for sure. Let me see what else I might want to check here. I think I pretty much covered everything for now, but so I was just trying to protect you, your friends, your family. That's what it's all about here on Cloud to Weather. Let me see if there's any questions or comments from any of the viewers at home. I know Top K&AN watching there on YouTube. Thanks so much for watching there, and some other folks watching as well. I know, you know, right now looking like Puerto Rico is gonna be in a pretty good spot. I mean, definitely getting some squally weather down there from Aaron, but they're not getting the direct impacts. At least part of Puerto Rico is getting squally weather, but Virgin Islands more so. As we're looking at things, as we're tracking things, there's not even a tropical storm watch for Puerto Rico or the U.S. Virgin Islands. So I switch over to this other viewpoint here on things. You know, as the situation does evolve, you see our hurricane. I mean, it's on the very fringe radar, so it's a lot stronger than it looks here, but it's a Cat 5 hurricane, and this is Puerto Rico, but it's going to the north of them, north of the Virgin Islands, but there is, you know, some squally weather, especially coming to there. That's why there's a flash flood warning here for St. Thomas and St. John in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Life-threatening flash flooding there from Aaron's outer bands. So that's not what you want to hear, obviously, even though the storm is way up here. There's not even a tropical storm watch on the tail end here. They're getting some of this down that way off toward the south and the west. So I know. Let me measure some distances real quick on this, because this is the one thing about radar too, is, you know, having this here in play. I know it's right on the fly, but they're about 140 miles southwest of the center of Aaron. So let's see here. So I'm just going to kind of extrapolate some things out, and we're going to go to a different system. So let me see this. So our current track right now You see, and the storm's probably going to get bigger, so keep that in mind too. But you see that red area out there, kind of it's in the middle of the track, and maybe a little east or a little west of that. The track probably would have it a little east of that point, but it goes a little west, 140 miles southwest of that. Out here, that means that's where some of the action is at. But if it's getting bigger and it moves a little further west, maybe the Outer Banks of North Carolina have a problem. I mean, they're a little more used to handling this than other areas, but maybe some tropical storm conditions out that way, not out of the quest from Aaron, Cat 5 hurricane. As we're looking at things and as we're tracking things. Not because of, not having direct U.S. impacts, just the marine impacts are upsurf, the, really high, rip current risk. It's not near as big of a deal as the other Cat 5 we've had lately. This is not even like Dorian. Dorian just destroyed some areas in the Bahamas, but it came very close to Florida. We had to watch to see how the turn would happen if it would wobble. But this is way, way, way further east than Dorian was. And, as of now, we're not expecting any land areas to get a direct hit from this, as we're looking here, as we progress this, out many days. I mean, if it really shifted east, maybe Bermuda, but, you see it as weakening, and we'll watch Canada, but it's said further east to be weaker by then to some extent, Cat 2 later on in the forecast. So that's a, meteorological storyline, but it's not as impactful or near as impactful as a lot of the Cat 5s over the years that we've had to talk about. Just had a gust there measured 45 miles an hour around Dallin Park. I know he got hit so hard by Idalia in 23 and Helene in 24 there into western Suwannee County. This is nothing compared to those storms, but 45 mile an hour gust could blow a few things around for sure out that way. So I know it's crazy as how many folks, in our area so impacted by Helene and Idalia. Never going to forget those impacts. I mean, that's one reason we got to make sure we really emphasize here, that if a storm's not coming our way, we tell you guys that. I mean, if it's obvious, we tell you guys. I'm talking about tropical cyclones. I mean, we can't just, say, well, maybe it's wobbling a little west and, okay, instead of 500 miles away, it's going to be 450 miles away. We don't want to hype stuff up. We've had way too many storms since 2016 to be hyping stuff up. I mean, a lot of areas, not everybody, but a lot of areas have had, some of the worst storms I've seen in many decades here, just in the last several years, toward our area. So, I mean, just a really nasty situation, for sure, as we're tracking things with everything in the tropics lately, but it's so bad, luck with things with Idalia and Helene and, we can't just be hyping things up because Aaron wobbled 50 miles west. If it was just off the coast, sure, that would make a big difference. I mean, we got lucky with Matthew. If it would have wobbled some, that would have been a big problem for some of our counties further north, along the coast. It would have been even worse than it was. But my point is, when something's this far out, the wobbles might impact North Carolina, Outer Banks some, make things, become tropical storm watch type scenarios for a few zones there. But for us, the risk is going to stay the same, even if it's a couple hundred miles one way or the other. The rough surf, the rip currents, I mean, and we'll have dry air on the backside, western side of that, per se, as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things. I mean, it'll affect the amount of the moisture some based on where it is, but, it's not something to turn the logo red about. It's not something to hype up. I mean, we see it in the model. There could be something later on in the season, whether it's what I was showing you, or it could be something, down the line even, or might not be, for a few years that we have to watch something real bad, potentially be an issue here. You never know, but, if it's not going to be an issue, we need to just tell you that, and that's the storyline with Aaron. Unless you're in the water, which you do got to be very careful in the water, but this is not a storm surge situation or anything like that either. I mean, as we're looking here, as we're tracking things, I mean, let's not hype up Aaron here. I see it all over social media, and because it wobbled 50 miles, it's still gonna be 500 miles, 450 miles away from Florida to the east. I mean, we're okay here locally, except for the marine conditions. If you're in the water, be careful. But the land areas, it's not. I mean, we're gonna have less rain because of it next week. It's gonna help dry up some of the afternoon storms and you know, I mean, it's not a big deal. We've had so much since 2016, and I'll forget some because we've had so many at this point. You know, used to it'd just be a handful. You talk about the 04 season and Faye and 08 and Debbie and 12, Baby Barrel and 12, and be done with it. But now the lesson 2016 has just been so expansive and extensive. Okay, we just got a local warning here, but so we'll stick with this a little longer. I saw the signature on the radar there. I was wondering if we were gonna get a warning out toward Swanee County. We had a little bit of a hail indication, so I'll go through that list in a second. But let's go over to severe thunderstorm warning. Just got issued for areas there, northwestern Swanee County. At 5:03, a severe thunderstorm was located near Swanee River State Park and is drifting east. Other storms were near Newbern and Swanee. They are 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts, Live Oak and Newbern. I still hear some lightning closer to home in Bradford, but might be some lightning from Clay, actually. But Live Oak and Newbern, as we're looking at things and tracking things over that way. Let's go to the velocity then on this. Let's go ahead and pull this on up. You see some of the wind coming out of Madison County around I-10 here. You know, going to be moving in toward Swanee County here. Some of this is right along I-10, so some pretty nasty weather coming on in. Going to be dropping on in toward the Live Oak area there over the next little bit. Different folks watching. Again, just trying to keep you guys informed here. You know, again, we're not concerned about Aaron here. Just watch, you know, the folks, if you're in the water, is you know, in the Atlantic would be the issue. But I mean, even at the beach, it's, you know, walking the beach here. I mean, you might notice the water off some, but I mean, it's not gonna be, you know, a big deal for you guys walking the beach. Even Hurricane Aaron coming up there locally a lot across our northeast Florida and southeast Georgia coastal zones. As we go ahead and look here, I wanted to show some of the storminess here on a traffic camera perspective with this, you know, severe weather warning input. Let's go ahead and kind of pop this on up here. So you see folks having to take it kind of slow on I-10 right now. Look at that. Ooh. Hope that wasn't a power flash or something. You know, that would indicate some higher winds. Not necessarily a tornado or anything, but maybe some higher winds. We just got a warning from Madison County, too. Tallahassee office seeing it's looking pretty nasty. So they kind of had an issue, even though it's kind of moving more into or Jacksonville jurisdiction with Swanee County. So we now have Madison till 5:45, Swanee County till 5:45. But as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things of 60-mile-an-hour gusts, the possibility, and there are some dangerous weather for sure. So let's go ahead and jump back on over here toward the velocity mode right there in, you know, some of these zones that are on I-10, maybe around Lee being impacted, and points eastward really, though, would be where the greatest threat is. So, I mean, Lee's kind of on the periphery, maybe parts of Lee, but more, you know, in just far eastern parts of Madison getting into Swanee County. Again, that's where we have the 2 severe thunderstorm warnings now. Let me go ahead and go over to another mode because infrared satellite can kind of tell the story sometimes. I mean, it's kind of crazy here, some of the accent. I mean, how cold the cloud tops are right there in toward that area where we have the severe weather potential. I mean, we have a little bit of that down in here south of Brantford. Let me check that storm real quick. Yes, pretty some strong weather, but you know, this just tells you it sticks out a little bit there, and that's, you know, indicative of some more enhanced severe, you know, weather threat, not, you know, overwhelming, but on the localized level, you know, it could have a tree get knocked down here or there, a possibility is what I'm saying. So right there in that area there, as we're looking, as we're tracking things live right now. So let me go ahead and switch back on over here. See some of that wind there on I-10, but, you know, speaking of I-10, speaking of this area, I mean, this is, you know, an area that got hit so hard by the tropical weather last couple of years. I mean, threw in Debbie there too, but, you know, last year's Debbie, but yeah, I say, of course, obviously, Idalia and Helene were just devastating for some of these areas. Just awful stuff. As we're looking at things, as we're tracking things here in the overall meteorological picture. So, you know, this is why we're not hyping, you know, the tropics up about a storm this far away that's not going to hit us directly, you know, with air. Because we've had since 2016, we've had just so many hurricanes. Hermine, Matthew, you know, Irma. I'm talking about ones that have had a local impact generally here. Michael. Again, I want to miss some of these. I mean, you've had storms like even Fred. I mean, that was a western area issue. We had getting in there, just going through this in my mind here. The last, of course, Helena, Dahlia, Debbie, and we could go on and on. I'm sure I'm forgetting some. That's the point. You know, we've had so many. We've had just so many storm systems there come around and be a problem. So let me just go ahead and keep looking at things, keep tracking things here in toward the weather center. Just trying to give you guys the very latest here at 5:11. Speaking of, you know, on our map here, they're not getting the worst of this. They are technically on the edge of this morning. We had that gust around Dallin Park. I know it's really bad, you know, weather, you know, outcomes there in 24, but in 23 even, you know, Helene kind of replaced Idalia as a storm of record, you know, for these areas here last, you know, several decades, many decades into war day spots. But Idalia was a big deal as well. Let's remind you guys of some of that damage there in 23. As we kind of pull this up on the graphics here, the Dallin Park area in Suwannee County, 1 week after Hurricane Idalia. What a big deal that was there. You know, this is why we don't hype stuff up. I mean, because Helene was worse than Idalia. We don't even talking about a storm system that's 100 miles away. Even when that's as closest point, it's more than that now. But you know, but at its closest point, it's not going to have those direct impacts. You know, or even indirect, you know, adverse impacts here toward the land areas. That could be a positive impact for some dry weather in some ways, but might, you know, the heat might not be something you guys want, you know, as we're looking at things. But the marine impacts we'll be watching. But you know, the Dahlia was a big deal in 23. As we're looking at things and as we're tracking things, even Helene kind of became the storm of record there in 2024. So again, just trying to keep you guys up to date. We have these 2 new severe thunderstorm warnings. That's why we're sticking with this here a little bit longer as we're watching the situation here meteorologically. We have the warning for portions of Madison until 5:45 and portions of Suwannee County until 5:45 here. So definitely watching this situation very carefully as things do move along. Let me go ahead and keep on looking at things, keep on tracking things here. Power outage wise, a couple hundred customers in the dark in Suwannee County right now, even. So that's something to take note of there as we're watching the overall situation. Just trying to kind of get an idea of what's going on here. For sure, in this type of setup. It's just very important to kind of stay on top of all this. Just going through some different things here. Just trying to keep you guys up to date. So let me go ahead and zoom on out. Look at all that lightning there toward parts of Gilchrist County now. See that down there. See an advisory here for parts of Flagler County. And let's zoom back up there. We have these warnings. Just going to go ahead and look at some different things here. Let's go ahead and pull this traffic camera up again, and it's pretty nasty. As you look at different things. There's some flashes here just right before I took this shot again that were pretty, impressive. You see some folks with their flashers on even. These are some pretty nasty conditions here. Folks try to get through it this afternoon and the evening now and the Saturday. Definitely seeing some flashes in there. This very inclement weather. As we started out with that warning for Clay County, then we've been watching some other areas of interest here meteorologically, locally. Just trying to keep you guys up to date on the situation. This is I-10 at mile marker 271 though. Definitely see folks with their flashers on. I mean, because the conditions are pretty adverse right now. So we get back to the velocity mode. Again, trying to keep you guys up to date. And I don't know the cause of it, but, I mean, with the bad weather, it could have been something to do with the weather, but we just got word of a structure fire in North Bradford County. This just came out. Bradford County Fire Rescue reporting that happening now. The Bradford County Fire Rescue units are on the scene of a residential structure of fire in the 300 block of Clark Street in Stark. Firefighters are working to extinguish the fire. Please avoid the area. So I don't know if that's because of lightning, because of the storminess, or something completely unrelated. We don't know. We don't know here at this point, but that's, worth noting, obviously. A report of a structure fire, a residential structure on fire in the 300 block of Clark Street in Stark here in Bradford County. Firefighters are working to extinguish the fire. Please avoid the area. So just, gotta be mindful of that. There's a picture associated with that as well. You can find that on their Facebook page there. I know it's, it's pretty nasty. The conditions, right there in toward, what we're seeing there. And, in terms of just how nasty that fire looks. So that's kind of a storyline right now. We're trying to keep you guys up to date. Let me go ahead and zoom back out a little bit. It's continuing to give you guys the very latest on everything going on. See some advisories here on the board, but then we also have severe thunderstorm warnings here as we're looking out toward Live Oak area and points westward. See some of that wind enhancement coming on in there. Definitely worth noting. Just trying to keep you guys informed. And just another example of, the bad, damage they had there in North 20 County during Adalia, and again in Helene it was even worse. A lot of areas, some areas, Adalia kind of did, make things a little bit, less, vulnerable, even though it was a worse storm, because it knocked so much down, but, unfortunately, but, as we're looking at Adalia there, that damage in 20 County, just a week after that hit in 2023. So again, just kind of telling that weather story here for sure. As we keep you guys up to date. All this lightning here, Bell and east of Hatch Bend. Again, just trying to give you guys the very latest. Just trying to keep you guys informed on what's going on. So the thunderstorm warning still in play. See kind of some of that wind there. You know, just east of Lee especially. Community of Lee there in Madison County. Just going through some more information here behind the scenes. Trying to keep you guys up to date. This storminess, you know, nothing like what they had, you know, with the tropical weather, but, you know, for the most part, but still impactful. I mean, as we're looking at, as we're tracking things. I mean, let's give you an idea here. You know, in Live Oak, this is a week after Idalia. And then Helene was even worse in a lot of these spots. So right now, some severe weather moving on through. As we're looking, as we're tracking things. .521 is the time. You see around these communities there, Western Suwannee County, around Ellaville there, they're getting hammered right now. Very heavy rainfall. I know we're keeping you guys up to date on everything. We'll probably wrap it pretty soon, just for the fact that, you know, we've been with you a while here, and it's not just overwhelmingly severe. You know, we started out with Clay County, and then we had to, you know, switch to some other topics here within our area, especially. But, you know, this area here is still worth noting. Still gotta be careful. Of course, it's not right in Live Oak, but, you know, just off toward the west here. Definitely have some pretty nasty weather around the I-10 corridor. We'll pull up into the traffic camera too, since they're in a pretty good spot for this. Let me see. We can kind of gather from those. Let's see what we can kind of pull up. Give you a live view of the situation. We'll go ahead and pull that up right now here as we're looking at things. You see here, kind of a slower go at times, maybe because of the inclement conditions. In the vicinity. I can zoom back out a little to try to keep you informed. See all this lightning, these green areas here. Here's some enhanced winds. Go back to a broader view over here. You see how warm it is around Central Florida. I know there and around Tallahassee, they've got, you know, not as much of that precip, not as much of that cloud cover. You can kind of tell it from that. In fact, I'll go ahead and put the visible satellite on here. Pull that up. That tells it as well. And they keep on giving you guys the updates. we're down to 75 degrees here. Used to start because of all that rain we had. 1.69 inches on the rain gauge. Again, trying to give you guys the very latest on what's going on. Again, we did have some breaking, news here, maybe related to the weather here in the Stark area. If you're just tuning in, Bradford County Fire Rescue reporting there that their units are on scene of a residential structure fire in the 300 block of Clark Street in Stark. Firefighters are working to extinguish the fire. I don't know if it was lightning related. It could have been some type of weather related. Just don't really know at this point. But if you go to their Facebook, I'm not gonna put it on the air. I don't want somebody to see their home on a broadcast here or something, depending on what's going on. But because it's just happened. But Bradford County Fire Rescue Facebook will show that structure, and it's engulfed in flames. So that's there in that area, the 300 block of Clark Street in Stark. So units on scene of a residential structure fire. So don't know if it's lightning related. It could have been. There was some lightning in the region here in Bradford County, as we've heard even ourselves. That was, right there, cloud to ground, that could have been a problem. So, could have been the issue here that sparked this possibility. I'm going to go ahead and zoom back out here as we give you guys the very latest on what's going on. Just trying to keep you guys up to date. Again, seeing all that wind there on Lee in eastern parts of Madison County. You see some development now north of Augusta on that Lowndes County line. We'll have to watch to see if that gets, some type of advisory on it here as we look ahead. So we'll definitely be watching there. Let's go back over to this view. 5:28 p.m. is the time. We've been with you for a good while here. Almost not quite an hour and a half, but approaching. And we're just continuing to give you guys the latest on all these storms here. You see there, eastern parts of Madison, western parts of Suwannee County, severe thunderstorm warnings are in effect till 5:45. Could even have some small hail in there. Just gotta keep that in mind. But the wind, the lightning, heavy downpours generally would be the bigger hazards. Look at all this lightning down toward Fort White, Branford. Ooh, that might get a warning pretty soon. This is just west of Fort White there. We have some wind enhancement now showing up on the velocity. The folks at the Weather Service office is always kind of peeled to this. That was right over a populated area, too. And, there's an advisory already out saying that could be gusts to 50. I mean, velocity says that, definitely could be the case. I mean, right over some populated areas in there, though. It could be even a little bit more than that. Not out of the question. I'm kind of looking between Hatchbend and Fort White there. This is as I go ahead and take that off for a second. Just trying to get my bearings a little bit. Looks like we're in northern parts of Gilchrist County, so I'm trying to make sure I'm looking at that correctly. Yeah, that'd be northern parts of Gilchrist County. And that's kind of drifting northward. So maybe eventually drifting into southern Swanee or southwestern Columbia. More so probably southern Swanee here very soon. Gonna moving up toward US 27 there. As we continue to give you guys the very latest on all that. It's 5:30 now, the bottom of the hour. I've been with you again for a while as you're tracking everything. Just checking some information on out. Just trying to give you guys the very latest. I know we do have that, breaking news, maybe breaking weather news. Don't know if it's related directly yet, but in toward Bradford County, we did have that report of a structure fire, a home, residential structure on fire there in the 300 block of Clark Street. I mean, there's a picture on the Bradford County Fire Rescue Facebook. It's, a bad fire there. Firefighters are working to extinguish it, but it could have been caused by lightning, don't know at this point, but not a good situation obviously there as we're tracking things. So I'm just trying to keep you guys up to date. So just checking some different things here. It's a home, so sitting out, it's a little ways, away from where we're at, but it's not really far away. Not really far away from my looking here at Google Street Maps here. It's in the vicinity, and I'm just double checking this because I'm doing this on the fly here. But just to try to give you some reference points out here. It looks like it's right there, kind of between the First Baptist Church and the Capital City Bank. So, home on fire in that area there. May have been because of lightning. Don't know for sure. So, again, kind of just the reference point there between the First Baptist Church and the Capital City Bank. From my first glance here at the mapping and the street view here, just to double check some stuff. So that's where we have apparently a home on fire. So that's not a good situation, obviously. As we're looking at things, as we're tracking things. Just trying to keep you guys up to date, obviously, on what's going on. You never want to hear about a home being on fire, obviously. As we go ahead and zoom on in right now on the mapping, I know this map is not going to really be able to tell us this, show it to us very good, but it's east of 301. So, as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things here, I mean, this is on the west side of 301. That's the high school, so it's not over there, but, it's not, it's somewhere, kind of, as we're looking just toward a little bit east of that marker there. And I wish, I could show this to you better on this map, to be quite honest. In fact, I mean, there's another map I could throw it on, but you wouldn't be able to see much on that either. So, as we're looking at things and we're tracking things, I mean, as we kind of zoom on in a little bit here, I'll kind of try to point this out here in just a second. As we give you guys the very latest here. So yes, somewhere kind of in here-ish is what we're kind of looking at, that kind of somewhere in there-ish. We have had that structure fire. In fact, I don't know if the lightning tracker will let me go back this far, but I can at least go back here on the radar. Okay, so we are going back on the radar and running this through here. Got a lot of storminess around, that's for sure. I wish the lightning track would go back that far because that could really tell us a lot. But, you know, see all that heavy rain that was moving across that area there in that last hour or so. That does tell the story. Does tell the story there. I'm sure there was, you know, electrical energy in that region. You know, don't know if that's the direct cause, indirect cause, or not the cause at all, but that's kind of the storyline there. As we're looking at things, as we're tracking things. So just trying to keep you guys up to date here. So yeah, just kind of doing some kind of in here-ish with that. Kind of in this general vicinity with that structure fire, that home on fire in Stark. So again, let me go ahead and switch back over to our warnings though further out toward the west. You see here, it looks like the wind's weakening some within the two yellow boxes, but the step further to the south looks like it's trying to get us that together. We might get a warning down there. McAlpin down toward O'Brien there. You see some of that lightning in that region. That's something to take note of. And you see some of these reds and greens here, some pretty strong winds in that area. And we're hearing some rainfall again around Stark. Probably going to be a short-lived little downpour where we're at. And now I got to wonder the timeline of that lightning too, because there was one strike that sounded a little closer to some of the others. I got to wonder, just kind of later on, if that was a cut of ground strike, and that might have been the one. I don't know. As we're looking at things, as we're tracking things. I'm talking about the Bradford County situation, but again, I don't know if that was the cause for sure, but sure that'll be investigated. As we go ahead and continue to give you guys the latest updates here. See all this lightning. Let me go ahead and just check in some different information. Going between everything here. Just trying to look through some stuff. Trying to stay on top of things. It's always going to be on, you know, alert, sadly, for those lightning strikes as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things. See some of that's lightning around High Springs right now, right there in eastern parts of Gilchrist County, right around Archer now. We have some lightning there. Really getting going in western Alachua County. A pretty heavy downpour there. Maybe a little bit of small hail possibly mixed in there around US 27 in the Archer area and just north of Archer, really. You know, on that road there between Archer and Newberry. And then you see some more of this lighting around Waldo Road there. By the way, they just issued an advisory for this right now, or down in here. They just issued an advisory to the Weather Service in Jacksonville, 6:15, because they're seeing that strengthening process go on down there. The reds there indicating some upscale growth, some growing of this, you know, vertically, some intensification of that down that way. As we look here toward the north, you see around Fort White, O'Brien, some of that lightning there. Live Oak area. Not, you know, some of this is weakening further to the north, it looks like, but not all of it. About Austin, we talked about some strengthening up there. That's getting stronger there. And toward Lowndes County. As we're tracking things. As we keep on monitoring the situation. You know, all these storms here. The different impacts, obviously. We started out with that one in Clay County. We've had a couple others to the west, plus just watching all the storminess, with the heavy rain and lightning around Bradford County, and talking about the tropics. Of course, Hurricane Aaron's a Cat 5 out there, Category 5, but that's not going to be impacting us, here in the land areas, with any adverse issues at all. So just the marine issues we talked about, but not having to turn the logo red, which is great news, obviously. It's not that serious is what I mean by that. Yeah, this is weakening enough here. They're dropping the warning for Suwannee counties approach 545. So that's good. This is weakening, but in some of this other areas, pretty strong up there. Even around Valdosta, pretty strong. Then down here, east of O'Brien, is pretty strong. Just under severe in a lot of these areas, I would say. West of Fort White. And then now starting to expand into toward even Alachua, western Alachua County. That's a pretty nasty storm around Archer right now. Not severe, but an advisory now that could be winds to 50 miles an hour. Some minor flooding due to heavy rainfall. So from near High Springs to 6 miles west of Archer. But, you see it right around Archer and to the east and north as well. I know that's just trying to give the geographic markers for the line. But some of the worst of this looks like it's right here. Right around US 27 there, and moving up to State Road 24 there. So not a lot of wind enhancement, but a lot of lightning, not heavy rain, maybe some small hail mixing in there. Some minor flooding due to heavy rainfall is possible. We're talking about Alachua, High Springs, Archer, and Newberry. As we're looking at that, we're watching that whole area. Jonesville would be in there as well. As we're looking at things down that way there in parts of the coverage area. So we're just going to continue to watch this situation. Just trying to keep you guys up to date. Keep you guys informed. Look at the movement on this. Definitely seeing quick development too. That was the biggest thing. That was only a few frames. You saw how quickly this is just exploding in the unstable environment we're dealing with. This is 520, and by 540, it is really getting its head together down that way. That is cause for concern. And you can really see the corridor on the visible satellite here. All the lightning. Infrared telling this story as well. Still see our one box holding on here for a few more moments. Inward parts of Madison County. Definitely that heat is still rated a 2. Gainesville got to 95 degrees. Jacksonville to 96 degrees. And that's helping to fuel some of this activity. Definitely a big player in it all, but you have different atmospheric triggers as well. You have the moisture around and the like here. The higher precipitable water values can play a role. So again, as we're trying to give you guys the very latest, I know just important to kind of keep it all in mind. Just keep it all in mind in the grand scheme of things. And again, just trying to track it all for you here. Let me check power outage numbers. I know Levy County, 472 customers in the dark. Gilchrist County, 166. Suwannee County, 336. 68 in Bradford County, where we're at. Clay, only 14, despite we had that warning there earlier on. Duval, just 1. Nassau, 21. Flagler County, 33. So far, none in Madison County, only 5 in Hamilton. So it's not always about where the warnings are exactly, but you know, definitely just got to be mindful here of the adverse conditions as things get going, you know, and impact different communities. In fact, there's now, I'm just looking at another picture here, Bradford word of mouth now, that fire there, it looks like it's right behind Capital City Bank, as you know, the one image, it was from the official page there, and it was a situation where you maybe weren't able to see, you know, exactly where it was for sure, but it's definitely right back behind there. You know, if you're going off, you're going from 301 to it, and then just keep going east. That's where it is, and it looks like it's being completely destroyed. The home there, not a good situation at all. I know it may not really be in the right direction. I'm just going to check something on one of my cameras, though. Make sure we can't see any of that smoke from this. I don't think we'd really be in the right spot for that here because it's looking back more toward the west. But let me go ahead and zoom on in here and more toward the southwest in some ways. I just got a flash flood warning for Suwannee County, so we'll jump in on that here in a second. But again, we're out here toward the east. I mean, if we was looking a little more northwest, I probably can see it here on there, or could have if it, you know, might be more contained by now. I don't know, but we'll just kind of pull it up here real quick and see. I mean, I think that's more the cloud cover on this, but you know, I can't turn this, but if I was just out there, I might be able to see it, or I've seen it a little while ago, the smoke from this here, as we're tracking things, because this is more western, little southwest maybe, but probably, you know, this little northwest really is where this would need to be to get that better angle on the view here of what's going on. So. But we do have the new flash flood warning, so let me go ahead and tell you guys about that. Now, this is in the word parts of Suwannee County. So let me go ahead and go on over here. So, around the Falmouth community, we do have this until 8:30 now. Northwestern Suwannee County, you see this red here, indicative of maybe 3-4 inches in the last hour. All that, you know, high rainfall, you know, rate accident coming together there. We had all that flooding in Marion County last night, but at 5:45, the operator indicated thunderstorms producing heavy rainfall across the warned area there. And we're talking about between 2.5 and 3.5 inches of rain have fallen. Additional rainfall amounts of up to 2 inches are possible in the warned area. Flash flooding is ongoing or expected to begin shortly. We're talking about mainly rural areas in northwestern Suwannee County. So, again, northwestern Suwannee County, flash flood warning now, including the Falmouth community. You see areas there as we're tracking this 5:45 to 8:30, 2.5 and 3.5 inches of rain with another 2 inches possible. I mean, we could get to a half foot though in that area, not out of the question as we scrub between some of the different data points. So, flash flood warning for parts of Suwannee County now until 8:30. So that's a nasty situation over there in toward the covered area. As we're looking at things, as we're tracking things here. We're just going to kind of give you guys the very latest on what's going on here in toward the weather center. Give you guys the, you know, different updates here, obviously, on what's happening. Again, just trying to keep you guys informed. Going through some different tools here within the toolkit. Again, now flash flood warning for parts of Suwannee County. We're watching that very carefully. Let me go back to the other view here. There's some really intense, storm acts in there in southwestern Alachua now. Ooh, I don't like that. Hopefully it's just because of the rain's falling here, but it looks like some wind really trying to develop on that maybe. But hopefully it's just the way the angle kind of far from the radar, so it could have just been hitting something in there that wasn't, actually the stronger winds. But pretty nasty weather here in southwestern Alachua. They may need to just a thunderstorm warning on this weather service in Jacksonville from Newberry to Archer. This is really intensified here. I know it. And the velocity here, it doesn't look as much from the Moody, but let me go ahead and switch over to the other radar side. This is a weird, it's range folding. I just wonder, it's 549. What's the timestamp on this? 549. So that's 8,500 feet up. How high is this? This is a little closer. So let's check the Tampa radar to get a third opinion, I guess, on this. And it's more broad here with still some wind enhancement. It's higher up though than the Jacksonville. And this is even higher up on the Melbourne radar. But some rotation in there in Alachua County. Let's zoom back in. Broad rotation right there around US 27 between Newberry and Archer. This is not warned right now, but got some pretty nasty weather, some heavy rain, maybe some small hail, maybe some wind here, getting, close to 60 miles an hour, not out of the question there, between Newberry and Archer. So we're watching that very carefully now. This is kind of moves off toward the north and east a little bit, eventually going to be moving up toward State Road 26 in Alachua County, it would look like. Again, that's probably just the rain's folding, making that look worse than it is, but I think it's a sign this is a pretty strong storm. I don't think it's as strong as the pixels show there, but I do think there's some wind there that could be getting to severe limits or approaching that there in Alachua County now because of that purple and just, let me check something on infrared satellite even. We're so far away on the radar, it makes it hard to kind of figure this out sometimes, but I mean, I see some uptick. It's a few minutes behind, but you see some focus around Newberry there. Again, be careful around Newberry. Be inside and away from windows in that area there. And between Newberry and Archer, really not right in Newberry, not right in Archer, but between the two here. And just especially just east of US 27 based on the pixels here. Between that and south of, let's see, State Road 26, east of US 27. This is a nasty thunderstorm for sure. Very heavy rain, some hail, probably mixed in small hail. And just a lot of lightning, a lot of, that wind, things probably blowing around there a little bit there. In toward that area and toward Alachua County. Let me go ahead and check some more information here. As we watch the situation evolve. Just seeing if I can get any wind speeds from that area. Let me see. What we're down with there. See if we have anything on another source. Bear with me here. Let's check the Archer weather stem site. And the worst move is just to the north, but yeah, I guess aren't really high on that, but you see some strengthening here on this. Okay, the latest scan, I mean, that's more realistic, but we've had so many over the years, severe weather scenarios in these areas further from the radar that kind of don't get a warning. I just kind of wonder if this is one of those, because all four radars are really showing some wind enhancement in here between Archer and Newberry. And when we had that, the rain's falling kind of, because we're so far from the radar, it's hard to say for sure what's happening. But I mean, if you had a tornado down or something, then this isn't going to be a tornado strong enough to pick up on a debris tracker because it's too far away from the radar. It wouldn't be that significant because the debris, height with the tornado, that's correlated generally to the strength of the tornado. not saying there's one there, but there's some weak rotation is what I'm saying. Probably more of a straight line variety, but you know, we're kind of in an area we don't know what's going on here, quite honestly. But sometimes you can get something that's a little worse than what you would think based on, you know, maybe just looking at some of the different products and not seeing a warning, but it's actually pretty nasty down there between Archer and Newberry. So again, just trying to keep you up to date. We don't have, you know, except for the flash flood warning, any official warnings in play. So we'll probably wrap it up pretty soon. But let's go to that flash flood warning in this mode here. We'll take it out of correlation coefficient, but you can see some of that. It's not as bad looking as what we had in Marion last night, especially because of the population's a lot lower. You do about 10 in here. I generally said, you know, the water should go down pretty quick there, but 2-3 inches in that area in the last hour. With some of the heaviest rainfall now more up toward Ellaville, but they've still picked up a couple inches in the last hour. So some flooding around Ellaville possible in toward parts of northwestern and, you know, western parts of Suwannee County. So that's why there's a flash flood warning there now, that green box. These brownish boxes are all significant weather advisories, not severe thunderstorm warnings, but this, you know, these are all closed, but just under officially severe limits. These areas here within the, you know, brown boxes. Some of them are closer than others. Some are really close, like this one down here, to get no warning. Some of the others are, you know, strong, but they're close, but not right on the edge of needing a warning, maybe, as we're looking at, as we're tracking things. But it's definitely here, just around, and this is a different area now, isn't it, from the Moody radar? It's picking on a different area now west of US 27. So there's some, you know, they may get a flash flood warning down here too. Ultimately, with all this rain kind of holding on, these are some really high rainfall rates. Remember, turn around, don't drown, don't go over a roadway if the water is too deep. You know, because, you know, that can be a situation where the 6 inches of flowing water can knock you down, even if you're trying to get out of it. I mean, you know, trying to get out of your car, something like that. I mean, sometimes you look at the road and you think I can make it through it, but it's actually a lot deeper than it looks. So I feel like as soon as they jump off, we'll get a warning on this. That's why I'm kind of hanging with it a little longer here. Yeah, the infrared satellite's now picking up on the quarter cloud tops in that area as well, as I'm looking at another screen here in toward the weather center. So, and I'll pull that up here. Definitely says an intensification process here on a more uniform level, not just one distance compared to another. That says the Newberry area, and it's kind of more just south because of the angle this is looking at it in, but, you know, definitely a strengthening area of convection there in western Alachua County as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things here. You know, an area that's more favorable for this. You know, they had not had, as we look, we see some rain, but I'll loop this around here the next little bit, or last little bit, and you're going to see how things developed and really are sitting right over that area there in southwestern Alachua County. This is a really nasty storm setup here. Not officially severe, but it's very close to needing a warning. Newberry to Archer. Some really nasty weather down there. Look at all that lightning there. And you gotta be careful. Don't need a warning. Don't need severe weather to have a dangerous cloud and ground strikes like what may, we don't know for sure, but may have happened. You know, something happened that caused a house fire here in this dark area recently behind Capital City Bank. So, you know, it could have been because of lightning and a cloud and ground strike. And obviously, you got to watch out for a structure fire. You got to watch out for people to actually get struck, which is even worse, obviously. But both are pretty bad. But obviously, you know, a person gets struck, that can be fatal, sadly. So, got to be watching for that. Haven't heard any report to that today, but locally. But as we're looking at that, you know, the fire, different story, but no reports of anybody actually getting struck. But Definitely seeing these rainfall, numbers go up there in southwestern Alachua County. Very nasty storm there between Archer and Newberry. So, again, be very mindful of that there. Just scrub between all the different tools here in the toolkit. No, there's not a warning on this, but it looks like it's right on the cusp of needing one. Let me see if we can get a traffic camera in that direction. See if we can get an angle over that way. I mean, you have to be from 75, so it'd be pretty far away, but see if we can kind of pick up on anything. Just bear with me. Just a one-man band, but just trying to get an idea on the visuals here. In fact, I might be able to just get a view out of Williston and try to look north. Let's try that. So we do have some Cameron and Williston available. Just trying to kind of get my bearings here. Bear with me. Trying to make sure I'm looking at the right thing with this. I don't know whether we're looking right into this or not. This is going to say the idea here, the storm that's in the area. This is from Williston, but the worst is to the north. As we're looking at things and as we're tracking things. So this is a Florida 501 camera there from that area. So again, just trying to give you an idea here what we're dealing with. See some of this wind still right there between Newberry and Archer. US 27, Western Alachua County. See a little bit of wind and it's been northeast of Fort White there as well. Gust of 35 around Valdosta recently at the airport there. Definitely noteworthy. As we're looking at things, as we're tracking things. Doing that flash flood warning for parts of Suwannee County. That heaviest rain as I switch to the closer radar is weakening in that box. We still get more flash flood warnings tonight. Definitely a possibility as we're looking at some of these different areas. Seeing some of these areas already pick up over 2 inches in the Archer vicinity in just the last hour. Some of that even more recent than that, really. But see on I-75, some heavy rain on McIntosh, the northern parts of Marion County. So we have some lightning around Brooker showing up here in southwestern Bradford County. More lightning around Waldo and northern parts of Alachua County. But I think we're going to wrap it up for now since we don't, except for the flash flood warning, we don't have any severe thunderstorm warning at least on the board. We're going to monitor the situation. If we need a break back in, we will. Definitely may have to do that. But we've been with you for a while, guiding you through all this. And again, we'll be on here if it's warranted. We're going to keep watching. We're going to keep tracking the situation here. But for now, I'm meteorologist Casey Cloud in the Weather Center. Stay tuned, stay safe. thanks for tuning in. We'll post, if we don't need to come on, but have another warning to post. And, not accept to provide live coverage. Facebook Casey Cloud and Cloud Weather, that Facebook page, and Twitter /Exit Cloud Casey, that'll be posted on those platforms. But otherwise, we need to jump in for a stream. Will be on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. Of course, Twitter's called X as well. But then you have clutter.com, the interactive radar, on there, plus all the links to those streams. On YouTube, if you're watching covered and want to back something up, within that stream while it's going, YouTube is the place to go for that. Because, otherwise, if I say something, you want to hear it again, you may have to wait for me to say it, or, sometimes maybe I don't circle back to, you can't do that while the stream's actually active on Facebook, Twitter /X or Twitch, but on YouTube there, based on my understanding on the others, unless something's changed here very recently, but YouTube you have that DVR functionality, so make sure you subscribe over there on YouTube at Clouds Weather. It's free. If you want to know every time I go live, now that does include the overnight updates sometimes, or week, in the week updates there, if you want to enable notifications every time I go live, that's something you can do. You can just also subscribe there and just have that, at your fingertips there at Cloud Weather on YouTube. So that's something to keep in mind as we're looking at things, as we're checking things here, as we're kind of give you guys the latest. So again, we're just trying to give you guys everything you need here, trying to keep you guys informed. But again, I think that's going to wrap it on up for right now. It is 6:06, about to be 6:07 here on Saturday. I know it's not local. We do have like nasty weather in the Chicago area today. It's a thunderstorm warning up that way. We've had this, and that's, there, you see the pink areas of the thunderstorm watch conditions favorable for some of that severe weather in that region. We haven't had any severe thunderstorm watches or anything around here, but we had some warnings. We've had a flash flood warning. We've had, we had the 2 severe thunderstorm warnings, earlier in the day, as I was alluding to. Another flash flood warning was involved in that. We had that fire in Bradford County and Stark. Hopefully it wasn't because of lightning, but honestly it doesn't matter. Whatever happened, it's a, sad situation there. It very well could have been because of lightning. So again, as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things, of course we're watching Category 5 Hurricane Aaron out there. And that's something that is a very, nasty storm system, but we're not going to have direct impacts here or any direct adverse impacts. Actually have some drier air, but we'll also have some rougher surf, rougher seas, some current risk going up, but it's going to stay about 500 miles to the east of us, the core of that hurricane. And Outer Banks need to watch for maybe some fringe impacts in terms of maybe some outer bands or maybe a tropical storm watch. But continental U.S., that's about the extent of any of the maybe fringe direct impacts. Marine conditions will be a story though. Nasty rip currents and surf could be dangerous, could be deadly. But keep that in mind. But we're going to go ahead and wrap it on up here for the time being. On this Saturday, on this August 16th year 2025. I'm meteorologist Casey Cloud. Thanks so much for tuning in, trusting me. Stay safe, and we'll be back here if warranted.